Mr. Foxhoven. We appreciate you coming down here this afternoon, and we're ready for your opening remarks.
Thank you very much. Thanks for inviting me, and thanks for taking all the time that I know you have to do to go through materials of over 60 people. I look at my writing samples and application alone and multiply it times 60, and I know what you're going through. So thanks very much to you for making that effort. What I'd like to do is just give you just a real short fingernail sketch of my background, and then kind of discuss what I think I could bring to the court if I'm appointed to the court, and then open it up for questions. I graduated summa cum laude from Morningside College in Sioux City in 1974. I received my Juris Doctor at the Drake Law School in 1977, where I was on the law review. I practiced law in Des Moines for 23 years in private practice. I did everything except taxes and bankruptcy. That pretty well summarizes it. I was a litigator, so I was in court a lot, literally having tried hundreds of jury trials, many non-jury trials and hearings. And again, virtually anything that would go to court I did, and even a lot of office practice I did. Handled a lot of appeals in front of the Iowa Supreme Court, the Court of Appeals, about a dozen in front of the United States Circuit Court of Appeals for the 8th Circuit. I'm right now on my, I spent, from the time of practice to now, I spent 6 years with the state of Iowa. I headed the Iowa Child Advocacy Board, started out called the Foster Care Review Board. A second program was added, changed to the Iowa Child Advocacy Board. Did that for 6 years, and then I went to the Drake University Law School. I've been there, I'm on my 5th year, so 4.5 years, just a little over. I have been the director of the Middleton Center for Children's Rights there. All that time, after 1 year, Drake made me the executive director of all clinical programs in the Drake Legal Clinic, and so I've been doing that as well, and have been ever since. Let me then just, after that capsule, just tell you what I think I bring to the court, and then answer your questions and try to clarify any of these or answer any other questions you may have. First of all, really I think I bring a broad range of trial and appellate experience. I just can't imagine that too many people can have tried as many cases as I have. Judges have joked before with me that you need to learn how to settle a case. I think I did know how to settle a case, but I tried a lot of them. That's just what I did, and I handled a lot of practice, represented a lot of people over the years, and just have had a broad range of practice, which I think is what attracted Drake to me in terms of heading their legal clinic programs, because I've basically done everything and can cover any kind of hearing that they have there. Secondly, I think I bring really a strong professional and ethical reputation, and I think that's obviously important for anybody that wants to be on the court. This is evidenced by a couple of things. One of my writing samples is an article that was printed in the Iowa Lawyer, the magazine of the Iowa Bar Association, entitled Changing the Character of the Practice of Law. If you read that article, you'll kind of know how I feel about character and professionalism and ethics. And as a result of that article, literally I got lots and lots of letters, emails, notes from lawyers, judges all over the state, even to justices of the Iowa Supreme Court, complimenting me on it and saying that it's the right direction for all of us to move. Thirdly, I think I bring a really strong work ethic. Every place I've ever worked, from the time I got out of school, I would tell you that they'd say, he's a really diligent, hard worker. I have consistently been, as a regular pattern, the very first guy there at the beginning of the day and the very last one to leave at the end, and work hard in between. Literally, I have an appointment tomorrow morning at 7 in the morning, and that's just not that uncommon for me. Fourth, I bring a strong experience and knowledge about juvenile and child welfare law. To her credit, Chief Justice Turnus really made this one of her projects. One of her goals as Chief Justice was to really enhance the lawyering and judging in juvenile and child welfare law. She recognized that what we do with kids impacts all of our systems forever. It impacts who goes to prison, it impacts who's successful, it impacts everything. And she really did concretely raise the quality of juvenile law in this state. And she did that in a number of ways. One of the ways she did it primarily was to enhance what used to be called the Court Improvement Project, and she turned it into the Children's Justice Initiative and really spun that off to really mean do a lot more and do a lot more important things for kids. I was very active from the very beginning in that old Court Improvement Project for the whole time, and I have been since she created the Children's Justice Initiative. I've been in a leadership role in that. And again, if you look at my curriculum vitae, at my resume, you'll see that I've spoken on juvenile and child welfare issues really all over the country for many, many years. Fifth, I bring, a real experience and skill in terms of outreach to the bench, to the bar, and to the public. And I think all of us would probably recognize the need now for justices of the Iowa Supreme Court to do more outreach to the public, to lawyers, and to the trial bench. My resume is the one, if you've looked at it, that is page after page after page of speaking opportunities where I've gone out and spoken to bar seminars, to legal groups, to judges, to lawyers, all kinds of groups, whether it's the County Attorneys Association, the Public Defenders Association, various bar associations. I've done that really over and over and over again. You can see that from my resume. Those are all by invitation. They're not by me soliciting it. And I've done that just all over the state. They recognize me as somebody, they respect that, and I've had the experience and the opportunity and the skill to be able to do that. In fact, my next speaking engagement to a local bar association, if you'd like to be there, is Friday at the Story County Bar Association up in Ames. Sixth, I think I bring strong research and writing skills. I gave you some writing samples. Those would include 3 law review articles, professional law review articles that were published just in the last 4 or 5 years, everywhere from California to Iowa to New York. So I think I've shown you, some strong writing skills. Obviously, I've written a lot of trial briefs and appellate briefs over the years. I've written a lot of newspaper articles, magazine articles. I've been a pretty prolific writer, and I think that's been recognized by the publication of those articles. Next, I think that I bring some real knowledge and experience in terms of recognizing, kind of enhancing knowledge of and dealing with racial disparities. As evidenced by my curriculum vitae, I've really spoken across Iowa and across the country on disproportionality, which is overrepresentation of minorities in the criminal justice system and the child welfare system and so forth, both highlighting this issue and working to reduce the problem. I looked at my resume, and I've spoken on that issue 15 times in professional groups over the last 3 years. I've spoken and served as faculty for the National Council of Juvenile and Family Court Judges, specifically on the issue of working to try to deal with disproportionality issues. They've had me speak every place from Portland, Oregon, to New Orleans, Louisiana, from Sacramento, California, to Newark, New Jersey, from Baltimore, Maryland, to Louisville, Kentucky. And I've done it a lot in Iowa as well. Minorities, particularly African Americans, are way overrepresented in our criminal justice and child welfare system, and I think that my experience and knowledge in those areas can be helpful in meeting the court's goals of equal access to justice for everybody. Lastly, I think I bring really strong administrative skills. In these tough financial times, I bring administrative leadership that can be helpful to the court, as established by my experience both in terms of the Child Advocacy Board and at the Drake Legal Clinic. And I'd like to just kind of tell you real briefly what my accomplishments were there relative to dealing with budget problems and budget issues, because I know that we all know that the court's going to be facing some of these same things and has been facing it. I started out when I came to state government working for the Iowa Citizens Foster Care Review Board, heading that program. This was what later merged to become the Iowa Child Advocacy Board. When I took over that program, I actually came into state government and took it over thinking I'd only be there for a year or two. You know how that creep happens. And I did that because that program was ready to be eliminated. It wasn't very, people saw it as not being as useful as it should be, and there was a recognition in state government, particularly in both the executive and legislative branch, that something either needed to be done or it needed to end. In just 3 years, with no budget increases and some minor decreases, I expanded that program so that there were 24% more volunteers and 83% more counties conducting 71% more reviews with the same budget. But more importantly, everybody that was associated with that program would say that when we did that, it was a better program. It was not just bigger, but it did better work and served kids better. And I think that was important. It was so successful that Governor Vilsack awarded me a Leader of the Year award, which still hangs on my wall today. I'm very proud of that because of the work that I did saving that program and expanding it with a tight budget. It was also recognized really across the state in various newspaper articles. I pulled one out, and you can probably see the headline that says, "An example of good government at work." That was a detail of what we did to expand and improve that program with no increase in budget and, in fact, small decreases. In terms of the court-appointed special advocate program, the CASA program, that was a program when the Iowa Judicial Branch was severely cut for funding and had to make some very difficult choices. One of the choices they had to make was to stop funding the CASA program. And when that was done, members of the legislature said, well, we really want this program, we want to save this program. And they saw what we did with the Foster Care Review Board and asked me, can you do it again, which is why I stayed a little longer than I thought I was going to stay there. And I said, sure, I think we can make efficiencies and I think we can improve and expand that program. Well, they put me to the test on it because they not only gave it to me with the budget it had, but they gave it to me with 75% of the budget that it had. So it came to me with a 25% budget cut the day that I took over that program. In just a couple of years, in spite of that cut of 25%, the program was doubled in size in terms of number of volunteers, in terms of number of children served, and in terms of the number of counties where we were operating. And that was, again, with a 25% budget cut. Again, I would tell you that across the state, people would say that program improved in terms of the quality of services it provided to kids and to the court. Finally, I came to the Drake Legal Clinic, and that clinic then has really always been a real strength at Drake, and it's been a good program, and that is not a program that was floundering when I came there. After 1 year of being the director of the Middleton Center, Drake asked me to step in and be the director of all their clinical programs, which I think is a compliment to me in terms of the recognition of my abilities as well as my administrative abilities. When I came there, it had 6 clinics, separate clinics, and today, with even a slightly lower budget than we had before, we have 9 clinics. And that's a 50% increase in clinical programs with really the same budget, with just a slightly less budget. We have a record number of students by far in the Drake Legal Clinic clinical programs. Again, doing it with the same amount of money or slightly less. I would also tell you that students, faculty, and people in the community would tell you it's a better legal clinic today than it was 4 years ago when I took over. And so I believe that I bring, a really strong experience to be able to deal with tough fiscal issues and to be able to address them in a way that improves program and doesn't have to stop the programming that's done. And I think that's something that will be of assistance to the bench. At this point, I'd be certainly happy to answer any questions that any of you may have.
Let's start on the right side. Ms. Dixon. It's awful hard having to pull that mic from Joe all the time, isn't it?
Good morning, Mr. Foxhoven. Thank you. Oh,
Time flies.
Good afternoon. At least I got his name right, Mr. And thank you very much for coming today. And on behalf of the state of Iowa, thank you for all the contributions that you have done on behalf of children. I have sort of just a focused question. In your practice, how much have you been outside Polk County, worked with the rural counties?
Oh, really a lot. I will literally tell you there's a time when a lawyer from Newton told me, why are you over here so much? You ought to open an office because you're practicing over here so much. I've tried a lot of cases there, but not just in the central Iowa area. I've tried cases in Sioux City. I've tried them in Davenport. I've tried them really all over the state. And so, I have been, in really a lot of rural counties and not just in Polk County by far. And obviously the federal work I've done has primarily been here, but I've tried federal cases in Fort Dodge and in Sioux City as well and in Cedar Rapids.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions from that side? You have your hand up, Mr. Pace?
Hmm?
You have a question?
No, but I can ask one.
Remember, it's like
You don't have to ask me twice, right?
Sure.
remember, it's like an auction. You make a move. And
I know. I must have raised my hand inadvertently.
My hands down
It
here.
is afternoon. Good afternoon, sir. Thank you for coming. I enjoyed our visit, and I also enjoyed hearing about the clinic. What I was surprised at is what you told me is that you were in court so much, and that. Can you speak to that a little bit? You have a little bit already to Ms. Dixon's question about where you have had cases, but I understood you to say you're in court even now, all the time.
All the time. Right now, because I'm with Drake, we try to limit where we appear in court since I'm in the legal clinic because students are also coming. We don't want to run them all over the state. We try to keep it in Polk County. In the last year, I've been to Dallas County, and I've been to Warren County, and I've been to Story County, but really, it's in the last few years since I've been at the Drake Legal Clinic, it's primarily been in Polk County. But I am in court virtually every day. It's a rare day. I had somebody else cover a hearing for me today. And I have hearings pretty well every day. It's very rare that I don't have 1 or 2 hearings in court. you know. in
What
the
kind of
legal-
things are you doing in the context of clinic and in court?
Sure. My primarily role has been in juvenile cases, but as director of all the clinical programs, I cover for everybody. So my most recent case up in Story County was a criminal case, and in Dallas County. I've done some probate stuff most recently in guardianships and conservatorships in Warren County. So really a little bit of everything. Divorce, I can handle plenty of divorce stuff. The faculty member who does the family law clinic, the general civil clinic, is the only clinical professor who's on a 9-month contract, which means somebody has to cover all those divorces and things that aren't over the summer, and I'm elected to do that. Having been really the only person on that faculty that's done something of everything.
Thank you.
Any questions from this side? Mr. Brody?
Thought they would call Amy first, but anyway, thank you very much for coming this afternoon.
My pleasure.
Wanted to ask, it's specific to your narrative and your introduction around your administrative successes, obviously. And the purpose of the question isn't to ask specifically what did you do to achieve the improvements that you saw, but more, what was your approach? My role at the company I'm at includes business process improvement. I'm trained administrative theory, organizational theory, so I'm really more interested in what's your approach? How, if you were here, how would you come in to begin to raise the questions and to think through a methodology of providing an increased access to the courts?
Sure. I'm one of I'm one of those people that believes that the people doing the work have the best ideas of how to improve it and where the efficiencies are. And so in both of those programs, as well as at Drake, I would bring all the people in that do the work primarily and say, here's where we're at. With the CASA program, I brought everybody in and said, we've got 75% of the money that we had. We're all going to talk about how we're going to fix this, what we can do. They're the ones doing it, and they very much can say, this is what I could give up and this is what I can't. And so I think that's a good approach to do. And that involves really creating an atmosphere where people feel safe to say things, you know. I always made sure when people were leaving, I went and talked to them, did good exit interviews, because, I mean, I literally, right after I started the Foster Care Review Board, somebody was leaving, and the first thing they said to me was, you don't really need somebody in my position. I mean, they were leaving within 30 days when I took over, and they said, certainly not at the pay I was getting. Nobody would have said that to me if I didn't talk to them when they were leaving. So I think we needed to hear that. I also went around really individually when I took over those programs and basically said to people individually, what is driving you nuts about your job that I could take? What do you hate about your job? What makes you not love doing it, you know? And a lot of the things that they had were no cost and were easy to eliminate. And by eliminating those, they saw that I cared about, you know, their success. And I think for the most part, the judicial branch is in a beautiful situation in terms of everybody that works for the judicial branch, and I will say that from my experience and from the heart, really wants to do the best they can do. And so I think with that in mind, you don't have to worry about who are the people that don't care. They all care. And so it's a matter of getting them together and making them feel safe to be able to say, here's what changes I think we can make that we could kind of do some efficiencies that can make us save some money. And I think that's the way to do it. Even if that would be the same idea I would have come up with on my own, they'll make it work because they feel vested in having created the program and the way to do it. So that's always been my MO.
Thank you.
Ms. Gogerson?
Thank you, Mr. Foxhoven. It's really great to have you here.
Thanks.
And might I say that your energy is infectious and something we all much needed, I think, this afternoon. So
Good.
thank you for that. As I know you're aware, my law partner is one of your former students at Drake and worked in the clinic with you, I believe. And similar to Sarah's opinion of you, I've heard from many of your other former students that I've worked with who all describe you as warm, kind, humble, collegial, hardworking. I mean, just everything you could really want in positive characteristics in a person. In addition to that, I think you bring a special connection to all generations. You're working with children, you're teaching students, you're practicing amongst lawyers, you're talking with judges, and you're out in the public. With that special connection, do you think that, I mean, we have some serious bridges that need to be repaired. Do you think that you can do that you can bridge the gaps with the bench and the bar, the old and the new, the judiciary and the public?
I really believe I can. I think I'm respected in that way. you know, this is, the way you're seeing me today is the way I am. You know, I've always loved what I do. I've always loved what I do. I love practicing law. I've had people, even including judges, saying, you really like this, don't you? I say, I love this. I love the job I've had at Drake. I've loved when I worked for the state with the Child Advocacy Board, and I know I would love serving on the Supreme Court. And I believe that I have a reputation with lawyers, young and old, that I listen, that I'm a good listener, that I care, that, you know, I try to work with them in any way I can. I'm a consensus builder. And I think I'm an energizer, a person who could get people to say, yeah, we can do that. We can do that. We can make this work no matter what it is. And I feel very confident I can do that. Frankly, that's one of the things that really attracts me to the job, is I think it needs that little shot right now. I think the court system does good work. Everybody really cares. It needs a little shot in the arm of we're all in this together and let's do this well. My leadership philosophy has always been, there are two kinds of leaders, and I think everybody on the Supreme Court is a leader, not just the chief. And my philosophy has always been there are two kinds of leaders. There are the kind that stand behind you with a poker and poke you to get you to go where they want to go. And there's the kind that says, come on, follow me, this is great, let's go do this. I've never seen why you'd want to be the second one. And I've always loved being the first one, and I think I could do that on the Supreme Court.
Any other questions? Mr. Cook?
Mr. Foxhoven, I remember many years ago when I served on a panel to select the finalists for magistrate judge, you were a candidate, and even then you had a broad range of experience before you had the gray hair. I want to ask you about your motivation for this job. I received a letter from a person I highly respect, Dean David Walker, who wrote a letter I don't think you've seen, that spoke about your integrity and your skill and your passion and your empathy. And it sounds like you're doing a tremendous job at Drake Law School. Why give up such a rich experience for this job?
You know, I have loved and felt every job I've ever had as a rich experience, and that's the absolute truth. I love the practice every day, and when I saw the opportunity to head the Child Advocacy Board, I thought it was a great opportunity to do some really good things, and I did that. And I came to Drake, saw the same opportunity, and I see the same opportunity here to really accomplish some exciting things. We have a great court, but we do need some work with the bench and the bar and so forth, and I think we can expand that and improve it and make it a better court. I think it would be fun to be part of that, reinvigorating the court again. It's also, any change that I've ever made, it's been kind of easy because I always loved what I was already doing. So, I mean, even today, I would love to be on the Supreme Court. Of course, I'll be disappointed if I'm not put on it, but I'm not gonna lose a lot of sleep if I'm not, because I absolutely love what I do. I'll go to work the next day loving going there every day. I think I can do a lot of good in that position, and I'd love to do that.
Thank you. Any other questions? Well, Mr. Foxhoven, we thank you very much for coming down here, and we wish you the best of luck.
It's my pleasure. Thank you very much.